Hello students, welcome to Rao's IAS Focus Weekly. Today on 3rd of April 2025, I'll be covering the important topics of the subject of science and technology in the past 1 week. There are 4 topics in the list that I'm going to cover this week, but remember there have been a couple of more topics which I'm going to cover in the next week's Focus Weekly, which I think are also relevant from upcoming UPSC exam. So let's see, these are the 4 topics. So the first topic that I'm going to discuss, it is the vertically launched short range surface to air missile. It is a recently developed missile jointly by DRDO and Indian Navy and has been successfully tested. So we'll talk about this particular missile. Then we'll talk about the recently in the news SpaceX FRAM2 mission, where for the first time astronauts have left Earth and they are going to revolve around the Earth, especially in the polar orbit. That's very interesting, guys. Then we'll talk about laser and detection used to identify laser and detection of radioactive materials. There has been a novel innovation where lasers have been found to detect radioactive material. You guys can easily think about it that radioactive materials happens to be used in nuclear arms and sometimes also smuggled, in the name of developing nuclear weapons. Then these lasers can also be effectively used to check if there is any nuclear element available. Then there is something called Parker Space Probe. Now Parker Solar Probe, it has been a popular solar probe in the news and especially important because this year is going to be the last year of Parker Solar Probe. And what is it going to do in the sun? We'll try to see all these things. So let us start with the first topic of our discussion. That is the vertically launched short range surface to air missile. Now this is a latest missile that has been successfully tested by DRDO and it was tested successfully at the Chandipur integrated testing range, and this particular missile system has been jointly developed by Indian Navy and DRDO. Now guys, what is interesting about it? It is the firstly made indigenous missile that is shipborne surface to air missile. That means it's going to be launched from the surface, will hit the target in air, but it will be launched from a ship. So you can call it ship to surface as well, ship to air as well. So it will be launched from the ship, and it can be launched vertically exactly upward in the direction and can hit the target, right? And it is a near boundary low altitude capabilities also. So even if an object comes vertically close to us, this missile can be launched and it can neutralize the target. Now guys, there was already a successfully developed missile called Astra. There is already a successfully developed missile called Astra with DRDO, and this missile of DRDO is basically nothing but a surface launched variant of Astra missile. It uses a similar kind of monitoring, similar kind of navigating system, but that's why it is called the surface launch variant of Astra. Right? Astra has already been successfully developed. It has already been tested as well. It was an air-to-air missile, but this one is a surface launch version of the similar mechanism of Astra. Then guys, what are some of the features that we have come to know? That it is expected to touch a range of up to 80 kilometers. So any target that is up to an altitude of 80 kilometers from Earth, this missile can easily intercept and hit it. It has also been using the indigenously developed radio frequency seeker. So it basically monitors and observes the entire environment with the help of radio waves. And then it is also mounted on an indigenously developed vertically launching unit. So the vertical launching unit is mounted over the ship, and this particular missile is going to be carried by the vertical launching unit. And guys, this is very likely to be installed in our destroyer ships. Destroyers are the ships which are somewhat bigger ships. They are very popular for their high blue water capacity, and these ships are again quite popularly inducted in the Indian Navy. In the class lectures, I have told you that many of the destroyers are named after cities. So INS Delhi, INS Vishakhapatnam, all these are good. INS Marmagaon, all these are good examples of destroyers. These missiles are going to be put in these destroyer ships. It is likely to be put in these destroyer ships. So guys, this was the information regarding the first news. So completely factual, nothing to explain. Then guys, another factual news that was popular this week, it was FRAM2. SpaceX historic mission to fly 4 passengers over Earth's poles. Now this trajectory, so guys, we all know that humans have been going into space. We all know that astronauts have made it to space for many years. They have been going. But what is so special about this SpaceX mission? So guys, what makes the SpaceX mission special? It's mainly because what route this mission is going to take. This route is basically has launched 4 astronauts, and they are going to travel around the Earth, especially revolving over the Earth's poles. The Earth's poles are basically something that adds the capability or adds the uniqueness to the FRAM2 mission. Now, what makes this particular event so interesting? Actually, the FRAM2 mission is the first privately funded astronaut crew mission. That's first point. It has been launched by SpaceX Falcon rocket and the Crew Dragon capsule, the same Dragon capsule that was used to bring back Sunita Williams. Then it is the first time a crewed space flight has taken such a route. What is the route, guys? The route is exactly going over the poles. In the previous slide, in the news cutting it was given, it is exactly moving over the poles, over the Earth's polar areas. Mostly before this event, most of the missions, they were supposed to be sent around equatorial or low inclination orbits only. But this is the first time it will be going over the poles. Now you may ask this question that why space missions over poles have not been very popular. ऐसा क्या है that they have not tried to reach poles before? The reason is, you guys know that when you talk about the high energy ionizing radiation of the sun, I have talked about this even in the class as well. When you talk about the high energy radiations, high ionizing radiation of the sun, X-rays and gamma rays, we all know that these X-rays and gamma rays, they are unable to enter Earth. They are stopped from entering Earth. The reason how are they stopped is mainly because of an imaginary belt called Van Allen belt. Van Allen belt, you guys can understand, this is the Van Allen radiation belt depicted in this image. The Van Allen belt varies from 600 kilometers to 40,000 kilometers in altitude, right? And when it comes to the Van Allen belt, this is basically a belt that is made up of Earth's magnetic field, magnetosphere, and Earth's ionosphere. And together this Van Allen belt stops the entry of any X-rays and gamma rays from reaching Earth's surface. So most of the time, all the missions that have been sent so far, they are supposed to revolve around the Earth's equatorial region, because at the equator the Van Allen belt is the thickest, right? But guys, the Van Allen belt gets narrowest when it reaches towards the poles. So exactly over the poles, it is possible that some high energy radiations of X-rays and gamma rays, we also call them ionizing or radioactive radiations, these radiations may be able to reach to the poles and can be highly dangerous for any crewed mission. And this is the reason why most of the countries have avoided putting crew missions at this orbit. But this is for the first time the FRAM2 mission is going to execute it, right? So because there is a high chance of influx of some strong magnetic field as well as high ionizing radiations, the amount of fuel that is required, right, in the polar mission is more, and that makes the FRAM2 mission very important. You guys can easily take a hint that if astronauts are traveling over this particular orbit and they are going to stay there for at least 3 to 4 days, it's very obvious when these astronauts will come back, a long-term study on the astronauts can help us understand what is going to be the impact of all these radiations on the human body if a person is exposed for a certain time. So it can be a good, interesting astrobiological research also. Astrobiological research means the impact of space on biological or living substances or living things, astrobiological. So this is basically are the two things that makes the FRAM2 mission very important. Then guys, next is Parker Solar Probe. Now this Parker Solar Probe has also been discussed in the class quite extensively. And why this probe has been in the news? It was in the news because it has broken its own previous record. Now before I talk about this achievement, let me quickly talk about what is the Parker Solar Probe related to. So guys, Parker Solar Probe is named after an American scientist. His name is Dr. Eugene Parker. Dr. Eugene Parker, it is named after him. And who is Dr. Eugene Parker? Dr. Eugene Parker predicted solar winds. He predicted that the sun's corona is emitting some wind-like particles which were eventually called as solar winds. So he predicted that there should be an existence of solar winds. And guys, with the discovery of solar winds, we also got introduced to something called space weather phenomena. That includes corona mass ejections, solar storms, and such. So guys, when Dr. Eugene Parker predicted this phenomena, that's why this mission is named after him. So one can easily understand that the objective of this solar mission is to study the space weather phenomena, right? The objective is to study the space weather phenomena. So whatever is there in the name of space weather, these are the things that Parker Solar Probe will be studying, to study the space weather phenomena. That's first point. Now guys, what the Parker Solar Probe is supposed to do. So guys, this probe is supposed to be a 7-year long probe. It's a 7-year long project launched in the year 2018 and is supposed to work till 2025. So this year happens to be the last year of Parker Solar Probe. And in this 7 years, what has been the objective of the Parker Solar Probe? So guys, the objective is very clear. The objective of the Parker Solar Probe is to touch the sun's surface. Now you guys know that when you talk about the sun's layers, the innermost layer is called the core. Then we have got the surface of the sun, we call it the photosphere, right? That is also referred as surface. Then we have another layer called chromosphere, and then we have another layer called corona, right? So these are the layers of the sun. And when you talk about surface of the sun, photosphere is often referred as the surface of the sun. Photosphere is often referred as the surface of the sun. So this surface of the sun, photosphere, this is likely to be touched by Parker Solar Probe this year. And guys, so this is basically the objective of Parker Solar Probe. And in this entire maneuvering, when it is going to touch the sun's surface, it has already collected a lot of data for the past 6 years regarding the space weather phenomena, and it is also likely to study further regarding the various phenomena of space weather, right? So all these things are something that Parker Solar Probe is going to try to study. I hope all of you guys are able to get it. Now guys, why it was in the news lately? So guys, Parker Solar Probe was in the news because very recently it has reached as close as 6.1 million kilometers from the sun's surface. From the sun's surface, it has gone as close as 6.1 million kilometers close to the Earth's sun surface. So something that has been able to sustain this like kind of temperature, that is what Parker Solar Probe has achieved, right? And guys, in order to protect this probe from this much intense heat, you may ask what is the thing that is protecting. So there happens to be an 8-foot wide, 4.5 inch thick carbon composite material sheet. So they have used an incredibly insulating carbon based composite material. Composite means a mixture of 2 or more non-metallic substances, right? Composite materials that can withstand up to 1370 degrees Celsius of heat while weighing only 73 kgs. That's the size of the shield. So if you look at the Parker Solar Probe in its image, you will always see that Parker Solar Probe is having a shield, a thermal shield in front of it that prevents the Parker Solar Probe from getting damaged. And behind the probe only there are all the payloads. So the Parker Solar Probe basically faces this shield towards the sun, and this shield prevents the damage happening to all the internal components of the Parker Solar Probe. So why this Parker Solar Probe can be important and can also be asked in this year's prelims as well is because this mission is supposed to touch the sun's surface by this year. So guys, the last time was when it did it in the first week of March. It was the second time that that Parker Solar Probe went this close to the sun. It will attempt the third time also to reach close to the surface. It will be in June this year. And that's how it will come closer and closer and will eventually touch the sun's surface. Remember, this particular image can also help you. It will basically try to study the electric and magnetic field of the sun. It will try to study the various phenomena like solar winds and the other space weather phenomena. And then it will also try to study the mysteries revolving around the sun. Like many of you already know that the solar corona, the outermost layer of the sun, its temperature is around 1.8 million Kelvin. Sorry, 1.8 million is the temperature of the sun's corona. But when you look at the internal layers, their temperature is around 6000 Kelvin. So how is the corona more hotter than the chromosphere and photosphere? We still do not know the reason. We still do not know the reason behind the creation of corona mass ejection. There are so many space weather phenomena. I would expect you guys to please look at the class notes for these space weather phenomena. And for all of them, it is still a big mystery to understand, to know what is really causing these events. So this basically makes the Parker Solar Probe a very interesting innovation, and this is what we are likely to see in the future, right, in this year itself. Then guys, the last topic for today is laser is now used to detect radioactive substances. Now guys, in terms of the science, I don't think it's very important, but in terms of applications of lasers or something related to internal security, it could be an important thing. Guys, when it comes to detecting radioactive material, we all know that radioactive material is such a material that has an unstable nucleus, and the nucleus is decaying by releasing heat and alpha, beta, gamma rays. These rays are very dangerous. They are called ionizing radiation. They can cause ionization of the surface whenever they hit any kind of surface, any kind of medium. So radioactive radiations are very dangerous. Now guys, there are multiple ways how we can detect a radioactive substance. But if lasers are used to detect them, that means you can detect a substance from a very far off distance. So if there is a weapon that is being targeted towards us, we can use lasers to find out whether it is a radioactive isotope, that does it carry a radioactive weapon or not, by using lasers. It can be extensively used in security in airports, metro stations, or any other sensitive locations. It can also be used in detecting molecular a composition of distant objects, celestial bodies, by firing lasers and seeing what is their molecular composition. So this is basically the importance of this news. Now I don't think whatever the news has much to do with the UPSC exam, but yes, UPSC can ask regarding application of lasers or simple way of detecting radioactivity, and that kind of questions you can expect in the exam. So I have still covered that this is a new technique which works on a phenomena known as avalanche breakdown. Avalanche breakdown is basically a concept where an electron is hitting another atom with such a speed that its own kinetic energy propels other electrons to get released from another atom. So it causes ionization of other atoms by using a certain energy, certain speed. Because electron may repel, and if this electron comes up with a very high kinetic energy, some electrons may eventually sprinkle out from an atom. So this is basically what the avalanche breakdown is called, and this avalanche breakdown can create sometimes lasers which can be detected and can help us in identifying the entire concept of radioactivity around an element. So if there is any radioactive substances, we can use some kinds of electrons at a certain speed, and by throwing those lasers onto these elements, we can detect if these elements are really existing in that region or not. So guys, this is everything that we have in this week's Focus Weekly. Nothing much here. Just remember regarding the application of lasers, and that's it. These are only the 4 topics that we are supposed to discuss today. I will definitely be talking about 2 more topics from this week, but I'm going to cover up that part in the next Focus Weekly. So guys, all the best. That is everything for this week. Thank you.